And Lori says she is with Cruise Bank and Trust from Port Charlotte. And Diana Shields, a guardian in Orlando. And apparently Nathan said Cindy didn't get the email to join. We're sorry about that, Nathan. And Simone Whitkin says she's a case manager and guardian in Palm Beach County. If you guys want to introduce yourself in the chat, that's great. We're going to give it about one more minute. Oh, and Jacqueline said she's just starting as guardian. We always love to have new guardians here. Good that you're here. Amy Bryant's with the Florida Guardian Support Network. And she put some information in there about a scholarship they're offering. So if you guys want to check that out. Marie Cardos has been a guardian for 25 years in Hernando County. We got a lot of people on here today. That's great. Okay. Well, we don't want to wait too long. So Peggy, do you want to introduce yourself and let everybody know what we're here to learn about today?
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to everybody. And my name is Peggy Hoyt, and I'm one of the founding partners of the law offices of Hoyt and Bryan. We are located in the greater Orlando area, but predominantly in Oviedo, for those of you who might know where that is. And I am a board certified specialist in both wills, trusts, and estates and in elder law. But my passion is helping people plan for their pets. So we are calling this program, Can You Trust Your Pets? What pet parents need to know about protecting their pet with a pet trust. So for those of you out there who are pet lovers, this will apply to you in your personal life, but could also apply in your professional lives as guardians as well. I think one of the saddest things that I ever see are the seemingly endless posts on Facebook for somebody who has become disabled or died, and now somebody's looking for a home for their pets. And I just wish that everybody would think about that before the need arises so that we know that the pets are going to be cared for in the event of an unexpected emergency.
Hey
So
guys,
that's,
I'm here. Peggy, I'm so sorry. I was running late. And
oh,
I just
that's all
want to
right, Teresa. Hi, hi.
hi. I just want to say hi and let everybody know that Peggy and I have been long friends for a very long time. She is a rare bird in an attorney who has a passion for something other than law, and it's pets. We've been to lots of pet stuff over the years, and she's really the gal to go to. And most of the attorneys actually refer to her for pet trust because that's her ballywig. So glad you're here, Peggy. Keep going. I didn't want to interrupt, but I want to say hi. I'm so sorry for running late.
No, that's all right. Thank you, Teresa. And I'm glad she didn't call us old friends, just long friends. So uh, we have been friends for a long time, and we do share a passion for pets and also a passion for sharing information with other people about how they can plan for their pets. So you can see my motto kind of is estate planning for pets and their people. But obviously, I do a lot of estate planning for people as well. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about my pet family. These are just a couple of examples of why I'm so passionate. So you can see Dash and Abby and Jenny and Sparkle and Forrest and Holly and Bingo and Wolfie and Blue and Piper and Evan and Darla. Some of them are not still with us, most of them are, but I currently have 8 dogs and 4 horses and one lonely cat. My little Jenny is my only kitty cat at this point.
We
But
can fix that, Peggy.
what?
We can fix that anytime you want.
I know. Thank you. I appreciate that. So you can see why I'm so inspired to talk to people about their planning because in my world, these are my children, and I couldn't dream of not having a plan for them if something happens to me. But the information that we're going to talk about today, who needs this information? Everybody, really, but particularly in our group, estate and elder law attorneys need this information. Senior care managers need the information. People like yourselves, professional guardians, need the information. Hospice professionals, both human and pet death care professionals, so people in the funeral industry, And then, of course, all of the pet professionals need this information. Everybody from veterinarians to groomers to boarding companies to what I call perpetual care organizations and nonprofit organizations that are in the business of helping to find forever homes for pets. I think the bigger goal for me is to eliminate or reduce the 6.3 million pets that enter US shelters annually. Of these, the numbers are down, but we are still euthanizing over 900,000 animals on an annual basis. This is an improved number from 2011, which it was reported 2.6 million pets were being euthanized at that time. I've seen higher numbers put out by the Humane Society of the United States. They estimated a few years ago we were still euthanizing 3 to 4 million pets annually. But really, one of my goals is to help bring attention to these various disciplines, the role that they can play in helping others create protections for the benefit of their loved pets. And then from my perspective, I also wanted to try and create a turnkey solution for pet parents and others that might end up charged with finding lifetime care solutions for loved pets. So I created an organization in 2018 called Animal Care Trust USA. You can find more information about that at actforpets.org. And we provide some pet trust solutions as well as trustee services. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the program today.
So Peggy, I want to bring up something that happened at the GSI training. For those of you all who know or may be aware, Peggy is actually the law firm that represents Aged. And so they know what we do at Aged, and they know about the GSI training. Well, it came up this past week, and one of our stories, of course, is a gal who has a pet and doesn't have a plan. However, on her dresser is Peggy's brochure. So the clue is she went to go see a pet trust attorney. She must be thinking about a pet trust. And the reason why I want to bring this up is you may get a case where the ward either never did any trust pet planning at all, or maybe got started but didn't finish it. So I think I want to make everybody aware that if you've got indication that that was something they wanted, it's fantastic, because then your attorney can petition the courts for that. The beneficiaries may give some crap down the road, and that's part of the job. But just think about that. Even if you have a ward that doesn't have a pet trust and they have pets and you got to deal with them, that may be an opportunity. So I think we're used to taking things that have a trust, and then we know what to do, and there's funding and there's a person to care for them. But maybe you can still get a trust even if they're adjudicated incapacitated. So that happened in our story this past week.
Oh, excellent. Oh, that was a very good point, Teresa. And I'm going to talk more about guardianships and pets in a few moments. And of course, Teresa, jump in, because Teresa and I have done numerous presentations across the state on that topic as well.
Okay.
I did want to just share with you some numbers. I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but 86.9 million households in the United States have at least one pet. That's 66% of all households. And as you can see, dogs still outnumber cats as the number one choice for pets. But lots and lots of people have birds and small animals like hamsters and guinea pigs and rats. And a huge number of people own reptiles, which that is always a shocking number to me. But hey, lots of people like snakes and lizards and things like that. And I had a guy on my podcast, All My Children Wear Fur Coats, who that's what he does, is he rescues reptiles. And so very interesting story there. And then of course another one of my passions, not being just planning for pets, but is horses. So I love to see that 3.5 million horses in the United States. We'll never successfully plan for all of them, but we certainly can try. So here's a few more statistics that you might find interesting. Millennials actually today make up the largest percentage of pet owners, 33%, with the Gen Xers coming in at 25%, and also old-time baby boomers at 24%. And those are recent numbers that were published in Forbes. back in 2025. We do know that in 2022 that Americans spent $136 billion, that's billion with a B, on their pets. So we like to buy not just veterinary care or food, but toys, and we throw parties for our pets. I've known people that have had weddings for their pets. Just lots of fun ways that we can integrate our pets into our family traditions. Um, Sometimes people tell me, well, I couldn't adopt a pet because I wanted a purebred, but I just want to point out to people that 25% of shelter pets are actually purebreds. And I have a number of pets at my house, all of them being adopted and some of them being purebred animals. So I would say shop your shelters first. My motto being adopt, don't shop. And then my dad was the president and CEO of the Humane Society of the United States for more than 27 years. And his favorite motto was, until there are none, please adopt one. So I have adopted that phrase for myself in his honor. And I definitely want to encourage people to adopt.
My first adopted pet that I didn't know was a purebred. This is how Nick and I got introduced into the Akita breed.
Oh,
We
yeah.
adopted this big, beautiful, fluffy blonde dog. Had no idea she was a purebred Akita, and we became Akita lovers ever since then. And they were going to put her down because she was big. She wasn't mean, but she was big, and Akitas were, they have a bad reputation, which is a whole nother conversation. But yeah, that was our first purebred coming from the shelter.
And I recall being at the shelter one day, Teresa, and seeing a purebred Akita in one of the stalls there, and yeah, heartbreaking to see that. I've recently become a Great Pyrenees owner.
Oh, they are awesome.
Yeah, so I have two of those now, and I just cannot tell you how
Smart.
every single day I see people posting on Facebook having to rehome Pyrenees.
Yeah, because you
So,
don't put a Pyrenees in an apartment. One thing do I want to talk about for guardians that you do need to understand is if you have no solutions for purebred pets, almost every single purebred pet somewhere out there has an adoption crew. People that will like Corgi and Akita and Great Mountain Swiss and Pitbull. People are like crazy. Pet people are crazy. We're certifiable. That's true. And so they often are people that will help you find good placement for that if there isn't an opportunity to do a full trust. So if you think you don't have any options for the pet besides dropping it off at your local shelter, please reach out to other guardians. There's lots of places to look, probably find good homes for them. Sorry, hold it.
no, that's
Hospice
absolutely
has
true.
hospice has some programs for pets as well.
Yes,
Hospice
they
does?
do.
Okay.
Yes, they
Mhm.
do.
Okay.
But Teresa's absolutely correct. There's a breed rescue for every breed out there.
Yeah.
And so again, if you do want a purebred pet, find a breed rescue, and you can get some really, really beautiful dogs that desperately need homes.
And
And
often pregnant and about to give birth to the brand new puppy that you want. Perfect. So anyway, all right, we're done with that. Sorry.
I know we're going to be a walking advertisement for a lot of rescue organizations, but one of the concerns that I have is that far too many loved pets face euthanasia in a shelter. And I know you've seen the sad, sad pictures of the dog sitting in the corner just crying its little heart out, because it ended up in a shelter because its pet parent didn't have a plan. And sadly, far too often, many of those pets are not adoptable, either due to their age or due to their health, or sometimes due to behavior issues. Um, so I really cannot stress enough how much we need to think about having a plan. And I liken it to planning for a minor child. I mean, my pets are never going to grow up. They're never going to get a job. They're never going to be self-supporting. They're never going to live independently. So they always are going to need my lifetime protection and care. And when I adopted them, I made that commitment that I was going to do that for them. So I just wanted to talk a little bit for a minute about the history of estate planning and pets. Because if you think it started here in the United States, you would be wrong. It actually started in England, where the common law courts there favored gifts to support animals. So it wasn't codified in their law, but the common law did recognize that animals needed to be provided for, and so they were willing to recognize a trust for the care of a pet. In the United States, our first court case was quite a while ago, actually, 1923, so over 100 years ago now. It was in a Kentucky Supreme Court where they upheld the validity of a bequest to a trust for the benefit of a pet. And they did this finding that it was a humane purpose. So Kentucky state law had a statute that could validate gifts for humane purposes, and a clever lawyer figured out how to get this bequest to a pet trust validated for this humane purpose. Now, forever and ever, you could create a trust and name a human beneficiary and give them instructions about providing for pets. But the law that we have today actually says that the pet is the beneficiary, not a human. So that's the difference between the old law and the law we have today. So it took really until 1990 before there was a section that was added to the Uniform Probate Code that validated a trust for the care of a designated domestic or pet animal and that animal's offspring. And so domestic or pet animal, so we really have to look at those definitions sometimes because people often want to plan for farm animals, but if they are pet animals, they can fall under the code. If somebody was in the breeding business, it could also include that animal's offspring. Um, Personally, when I define your pet or my pet, I define it as any pet that I might own at a time period when I'm disabled or at the time of my death. And now the Uniform Trust Code has also adopted a provision validating pet trusts. And I'm happy to report that today all 50 states and the District of Columbia have adopted a pet trust statute. So nobody anywhere in the
Really?
United States is prevented from planning for their pets.
And is it pretty consistent that every state still refers to pets as the same as a chair? They're still property?
Yes, that law has not changed, Teresa, although we are starting to make some inroads. And because recently there was a judge who actually awarded punitive damages for the loss of a pet. So they're starting to be recognized more as family members and not just as the equivalent of a table or a chair.
Okay.
Um, Perhaps ending up in a new definition of personal property. Somebody has suggested that it be called sentient personal property. So
Kind of cool.
that may be where we're headed, but the law is slow, slow, slow. Just as a point of interest, I wanted to let people know that it was actually Minnesota who was the last state to come on board. But that was
The
now,
hardest head, Minnesota. That's interesting. I wonder
yep.
why.
So that was 10 years ago now. So we've been fully in all 50 states and DC for the last 10 years. So
Okay.
but it's interesting because as much as I speak on this topic, it still seems to be a topic that not everybody's talking about. It tends to go in waves for interest in the pet trust arena. I did actually get some quotations in AARP recently on pet trusts, and thanks to Teresa for inviting me to do this. We're getting the word out to a lot of people here today across the state of Florida. I got an invite yesterday from the Connecticut Humane Society. So little by little, we're making inroads. So in terms of the state pet trust statutes that do exist, typically what these statutes do is they provide the default provisions and the overall law. Um, it would not make sense to just draft to the statute. Because when we're providing for pets, we want to be absolutely specific about the instructions that we want for their lifetime care and not just leave it up to the discretion of the trustee. And we can include any provisions we want as long as those provisions are not contrary to public policy or are otherwise illegal. It is still not entirely uncommon for people to ask that their pets be euthanized at the time of the pet parent's death. And there is some case law that has overridden that desire on the pet parent's part, but I'm sure there are literally thousands and thousands and thousands of pets who are euthanized annually because their pet parents left those instructions.
Peggy, you know I had that very case.
Yeah.
And I tell this story all the time, guys, because as a guardian, we're supposed to walk in the ward's shoes. In the ward's shoes. Honor their belief, honor their religion, honor their sexual preference, honor everything about them. And I have no problem honoring everything else except that. And that was the one that choked me on my client. And I thank the universe all the time because her dog died 3 days before she did.
Oh, that was a gift from the universe.
It was years. I had read her will and I talked to my attorney and she's like, you don't have a choice, Teresa. You have to honor this. And I'm like, I mean, it was a relatively older dog, but still, he was still a highly functional dog and having a life. And I'm like, that was one of the gifts that came to me in guardianship because I don't know what I was going to do when it came down to it to say, okay, that here's the will. I have to honor this. You got to put this baby down after she lost her mama, which would have been horrible. So anyway, that's my story. And it really happened. And it was tough.
It is a very, very tough decision. It's hard for the pet parents to make, but I think a lot of times we think our pets can't survive without us. And most of the time, that's not true. Our pets are very adaptable, and as long as they are well loved and cared for, I'm pretty sure my pets are not going to care who's delivering the food and the love. Um, So, as long as we can find somebody that's willing to take that on, they probably deserve the opportunity to have a new home and a good life. My bottom line message here, though, is that each pet trust should be drafted specifically to your needs and to the needs of your pets. So boilerplate doesn't work very well. I mean, it might serve as an outline, but every single one of the trusts that I draft for the benefit of pets are very, very specific to the needs of the pet parent as well as the pets. Can't talk about trusts without talking about the IRS, right?
Yeah, we've got a couple questions come in, but I think these will be better served at the end because I know you addressed some of these. So guys, we will ask all these questions, but I do want to wait because she'll answer some of these as she goes. Okay.
Okay. Yep. And then we can come back to those.
Yep.
So right now, the IRS does not currently recognize a trust whose beneficiary is an animal. So they think that trusts for the benefit of the pets don't exist, and the government makes up its own rules. But notwithstanding that, they are not going to miss out on an opportunity to collect tax. So as a result, any income that is earned in a pet trust is taxable at trust tax rates. I always say, and unfortunately, not at our pets tax rate. So I would like to claim my pets as dependents. That would be awesome. And I would like them to have their own bank accounts and their own pet tax rate. But unfortunately, that's not the way our system works. We also do not currently have under law an income tax or estate tax deduction for gifts to a charitable trust where the non-charitable distributions are solely for the benefit of an animal. But, and this is a big but, because many, many years ago, I'm going to say over 20 years ago, there was a gentleman who introduced a bill called the Morgan Bill that tried to get this passed. I shared that information in one of my seminars, and a lady who was listening is a lawyer in South Florida, and by golly, if she hasn't drafted legislation to be presented to the president for his review, and keep your fingers crossed, everybody, for his signature. Um, if that were to happen, we would have a charitable remainder pet trust where we could contribute assets where the pet would be the lifetime beneficiary with a charity as the remainder beneficiary. And that would be great because it would encourage way more people to create pet trusts, I think, and way more opportunities for animal charities to get the remainder interest. In terms of overall estate planning for pets, it has been estimated that somewhere between 12 and 27% of pet owners have included their pets in their estate planning. I don't know where those numbers came from because I don't know how you would ever accurately figure that out. But one thing I do know for sure is that 100% of my clients include their pets in some way. So that's not to say that all of my clients create pet trusts, because they don't. Many of my clients absolutely believe that their family members will take care of their pets. And I'm not going to argue with them. I just say that we can't assume that our loved ones are going to take care of our pets, even our spouse. I have seen way too many situations where spouses are the first ones to drop the pets off at the shelter, or rehome them, or in the worst case I've ever heard, one gentleman euthanized an entire kennel of purebred Labradors.
Aye, aye.
So I think planning, I think goes without saying that planning is super duper important. All right, so how do we do this? How do we create a plan for our pets? I think the first thing that everybody needs to do is identify at least two people, more if you can. I call these people pet caregivers. I don't call them pet caretakers. It's just a preference for me. I don't want people taking care. I want people giving care. So I refer to them as pet caregivers, to be responsible for the pets on both a short-term and a long-term basis. So you might have a pet sitter or a neighbor or somebody who could take possession of the pets in the short term, but not necessarily be able to provide them with a lifetime home. So we have to think about that in two perspectives, the short term and the long term. I also think it's a great idea to assemble a notebook to hold important information and documents related to your pets. I've created what's called a loved pet profile. It can be downloaded at Animal Care Trust USA's website for free. I think people should also carry an emergency pet alert card. Some organizations give these away for free, or you can make them for yourself. But it just basically says, in case of emergency, I have pets at home, please call blah, 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 their phone number, to make arrangements for my pet's care. So those would be your short-term pet caregivers, the people that should be immediately notified in the event of an emergency. I keep this card in my wallet behind my driver's license, because if somebody pulls out my driver's license for my personal information, they're going to see the pet alert card right behind there. I also think it's a good idea to post an in case of emergency decal or sticker on your doors of your home or windows. You can also put a sticker on your car dash that includes your provisions for your in case of emergency contacts or SOS provisions on your phone as well. Just use your creativity to think about all the places that you could have information letting people know that there are pets that need care. Worst case example I ever heard of was a dog was trapped in an interior bathroom of a person's house when their house caught on fire. They did not have an in case of emergency decal, so first responders were not aware that there was an animal that needed to be rescued. And then, of course, my particular interest is including specific pet provisions in your estate plan also in powers of attorney and ideally in the form of a trust and not just a general instruction that somebody take care of your pets. These instructions that you're going to leave for the care of your pets, I often refer to them as babysitter instructions. That's why I like the notebook, so that somebody who might be coming into your home to provide care would be able to find this easily, and you can keep it updated for each of your individual pets. The instructions that you want to include are going to be things like age, breed, gender, any identifying marks, of course, a picture of your pet. What are their eating habits and food requirements? Do they have any special medical conditions? Do they have any sensitivities or allergies? You certainly want to include information regarding veterinary care, choice of vet, their medical history, and then any special traits that only you would know because you know the pet best. I have a little dog. In fact, the one that was on the first slide with me, Bingo, um, he does not like to be approached when he's in his crate. So that would be a good thing to know. I believe he was beaten severely when he was a puppy. And I think they used his crate as a punishment for him. And so you have to be very careful about how you approach him when he's in his crate. That's his safe space. In terms of creating a comprehensive estate plan for the pet parent, there are a lot of sites online where people attempt to do it yourself estate planning. Do I recommend that? No. I don't think estate planning is a do-it-yourself project. The reason being is that most of the time, do-it-yourself planning is done incorrectly. And the way I know this is I have seen a lot of these plans come across my desk, and they're always wrong. The second way I know this is that when we send documents to clients for signature outside of our office, so not under our supervision, 99% of the time they come back executed incorrectly. And this is with very, very specific instructions, lots of sticky notes, lots of information about how to get these done correctly. And 99% of the time they are wrong. So I do not think estate planning is a do-it-yourself project. And I guess that's all I'll say about that for now. But what are the documents that you would want to have in a comprehensive plan? So definitely a durable power of attorney for yourself. That is going to be for financial and legal decision making. I always include pet care provisions in my durable power of attorney that authorizes my designee, my agent, to make decisions related to my pets. You could also consider a pet care power of attorney. These are ideal for pet sitters or short-term caregivers if you're traveling, allowing somebody to make pet care health decisions for your pets if you are unavailable. Of course, for your own planning, you would also want a durable power of attorney for healthcare, which would be for everyday medical care decisions. You would want to have a living will, which is your end of life declaration. And then for people who are serious about planning for their pets, you would want to have a pet trust and a living trust along with a pour over will. And your planning could also include some advanced planning if that's appropriate for your circumstances, that might include charitable planning or life insurance solutions for part of your planning. Planning for disability. This is the thing that is really top of mind for all of us here today. And we know that pets can be adversely affected upon the disability of their pet parent if there is no planning or improper planning. The statistics indicate that still more than 50% of people in the United States have done no planning. Improper planning probably fills up the other 50%. Uh, very small percentage of people probably have relevant planning. And the reason is that many people do planning once and they think, I've done it once, I've put it in the drawer, I've checked that off my list, and now I don't ever have to do it again. And the reality is, stuff happens, right? I say the four L's are always going to impact your planning. Changes in your life, changes in your legacy, how you want to leave assets, changes in the law, and ultimately changes in your lawyer's experience. When I started practicing law more than 30 years ago, I did my very, very best job for you as I possibly could. But guess what? I can do a better job today. I have 30 years of additional experience. So all of you guardians know that in the absence of a power of attorney authorizing care for a pet is still treated as personal property and likely will become part of a guardianship proceeding. And as the appointed guardian, you will have the responsibility for the care of the pet. I'm going to let Teresa jump in here because she can tell you a couple of quick anecdotal stories. Actually, not anecdotal, they happened to her.
Peggy, the one she wants me to tell because this is famous. So I was the guardian of a fantastic fifth generation Osceola County cowboy. Love that guy. Second tank that landed on Normandy. Anyway, he had three sisters and they didn't like him. He didn't like them. And he had what mattered to him, two mules, Pete and Patches. Pete and Patches were for real mules known in the entire Osceola County because they were the ones that did all the frontier days and any kind of activity that was going on. And they have beautiful tack. If you know what tack is, it's the leather and the turquoise and the silver that's inlaid into their reins that makes it beautiful show mules. So here I am. He's had a severe stroke, barely verbal, in a nursing home. Sisters are nothing but trouble. I've been the guardian for a month, then maybe 2 months. I get a call from the pasture where Pete and Patches are being pastured. And he says, hey, I'm selling this property. And I heard you're the guardian taking over so-and-so's stuff. I'm like, oh, Lord, what am I doing with Pete and Patches? Cut to the chase. Well, there was no internet then. And so what did I do to find out what to do with Pete and Patches? I went to the feed stores and I went and bought the Mule Association magazines and newsletters. And I started calling around, and I don't know much about mules, but I can read. So crazy how things turn out when my mama always says hard work and good luck seem to really hang together. Crazy. I ended up finding the people who bred Pete and Patches for this gentleman. And they were so excited to hear from me. And so we worked it all out. They were in Jacksonville, I think. They were going to come and get them. But I said, wait, I got to have a court order because I'm kind of abandoning these. And this is property. So I got to make sure I'm good. Let me work with my attorney. So Carol Donahue, attorney years ago. You guys may know her. She's fantastic. She's long retired. She doesn't think we're going to have any problem. I don't think we're going to have any problem. But the people did ask for one thing. They said, we'll be happy to take care of Pete and Patches for the rest of their life for no money whatsoever. We just need their tack because it's custom made to their bodies. Perfect. No problem. Well, there's a problem. We filed a petition. The daughters say, no, we want you to sell that because it's valuable. And then the judge was, so we have a hearing. These three daughters, hearing, judge, everybody, and everybody knows, little tiny county, everybody knows everybody. And the judge says, you, okay, to the daughters, then you guys take the mules and I'll be happy to give you the tack. Fine. They don't want the mules. No, we don't want the mules. He said, so she found a great home for them to go to, and all they want is the actual leather parts that they normally wear. You don't get that. You ladies do not get that. And so we were able to send it with this lovely family that came to pick up Pete and Patches, and they have lived out the rest of their life. And they were already 15. They were not young. They've lived out the rest of their life back in actually where they were born. And so the point of that story is you could, as a guardian, you could be coming up with anything, any kind of animal. I mean, in this world right now, you better be prepared that soon one of us is going to have a story about exotic animals that some ward has. It's going to happen. So the fun part about that is it warms my heart because I know he would never have allowed. So you guys may not know, but in the world of hooved animals, if there's not a home for them, they go to the glue, what we used to always call the glue factory or the slaughter line, whatever you want to call it. That's where Pete and Patches would have gone. 15-year-old mules, I wouldn't have likely been able to sell them anywhere. And he, my ward, would have died if that had happened to his two favorite babies. So it was a great thing. I tell that story just because as a guardian man, you have to be willing to hunt for anything, anywhere, anytime. I knew nothing about mules, but it was a great education. So that's one of my stories that Peggy knows well.
Yeah, and that's an excellent one, but it really underscores the idea that there are no specific provisions under the guardianship laws that provide for expending ward's funds for the benefit of the ward's pets. So,
Except we are guardian of person and guardian of property, and animals are property. Now, they happen to be a living, breathing property, which makes them so much more complicated than a table. But that is the reason why I don't think guardians have the ability to say, well, I'm not going to deal with the property. I don't think you have that option. I think statutorily, you have to, as guardian of the property.
well, and that makes me happy though, Teresa, because that means that you cannot drop a pet off at a shelter without a court order, because that would be abandonment.
One would think, and every guardian should absolutely get their attorney to tell them, can I drop them off at the shelter without a court order? Don't think that's a good idea at all.
Not if somebody comes looking for the,
Little
the
Pookie.
whereabouts of that pet
Yeah,
later,
where's little Pookie? Yep.
right? And especially if those pets end up being valuable pets in some way, shape, or form, if they were show animals for some reason or breeding animals belonging to a reputable breeder. So as we know, then the future of a pet can be very uncertain anytime that we've got them as assets, quote unquote, of a guardianship, because there could be delays or a judge would fail to understand the importance or fail to authorize expenditures for their benefit. Teresa, have you ever had a case where you asked specific requests for the right to expend assets on behalf of the pets and were denied?
Not denied. We had a client with 24-hour care, and the caregivers were struggling with managing her and the pet. So we added, she's at home with the pet. Caregivers are dealing with her and she needs a lot of care. So we just got a court order that allowed a pet companion to come in. There was 2 cats and 2 dogs, I think. So she'd come in 3 times a week, clean the cat boxes, fill up the medicines for the one sick pup. It was a lot to manage, as well as taking care of the client. So we did get a court order for that, just because we had a family war going on and they didn't want me to spend 50 cents on anything. Normally, I probably wouldn't get a specific court order for it unless it was like exorbitant. This wasn't even exorbitant compared to the budget. It was just what we often do in guardianship is we go to court to get a court order when we have a crazy family problem. Maybe not even a necessary court order, theoretically, but we do it because our attorney says, I want to protect you from this crazy family, so let's get a court order. So we did that.
Yeah, a CYA court order.
Okay, I have to bring this question up. This is because Monica just brought this up and this is making me giggle, but I got it. She says, I know a guardian who adopted the ward's dog with permission from the court. They did not ask for money to care for it, and it's living its best life. Sadly, ward could not care for it, and now it has passed. Monica, 98% of every guardianship animal is adopted by the guardian or the guardian's family or the guardian's staff. So, yep, Nick Barton, Teresa Barton, Andrina, Claudia, Allison, everybody at Guardian Care has adopted at least one of our ward's pets, because we just are not the kind of people who can take something to the shelter. Even if I got court order, I can't do it. So
that's amazing, Teresa. And I also had a bunny at my house fostering. I never had any experience with that, fostering for a while too. But
it's fun.
I thought
you learn how to be a bunny mom. So yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Well, and I've learned from my podcast just how hard bunnies can be to take care of. So they're very fragile and require a lot of care. So shout out to you for doing that. Thank you. So how do we overcome the problems of guardianship? Planning. So durable powers of attorney, living trust that also provide for pets. So Almost every living trust you're ever going to see is going to contain provisions regarding the management of the trust maker's funds in the event that person becomes mentally incapacitated or disabled. It's very easy to amend that planning to include provisions that also specifically allow the trustee the right to expend the trust maker's funds for the benefit of their pets. I include those in 100% of my pet trusts are from in my living trust for people who have pets. In terms of when we're planning for death, we know that pets will be adversely affected upon the death of their pet parent without proper planning. Please never, never, never assume that your family is going to assume that responsibility. Lots of people say, oh, all my family, they love my dog. I hope they do. Or your friends. One of my clients tried to tell me recently that her neighbors would fight over her dog. I hope that that's true. But there are lots of planning options. Number one being the most common, doing nothing. Number two being a will plan that just makes an outright distribution of a pet. I'm going to come back to that. And then thirdly, a trust-based plan. The greatest risk to your pet would be an outright distribution of your pet. I might say in my will, I leave all of my dogs to my sister Anne for their lifetime care, period. I've left her no money, no instructions, no nothing. Now, she's my sister. She was raised in the same household that I was. She loves animals. And so the likelihood is that she would do that. But there's no guarantee because I don't know what her circumstances are going to be at that moment in time. Maybe she's recently lost her own spouse. Maybe she's not in good health. Maybe she has moved from her 62-acre farm to a condominium where she certainly cannot care for 4 horses and 8 dogs. It's just going to depend, but I think it's a very risky statement to put into a will. It's better than nothing, but I think it has the greatest risk associated with it. The second greatest risk would be an outright distribution of the pet to a pet caregiver along with an outright gift of money. So I leave all my pets to my sister Anne along with the sum of $20,000. On its face, that might seem generous. $20,000 is not going to go very far to take care of 4 horses and 8 dogs. So I think it's really, really important for people to carefully consider what they're asking people to do and the amount of money that they are willing to leave for that purpose. Because nothing worse than me giving all of my pets to my sister, not giving her enough money, her running out of money, and then saying, I can't take care of these pets any longer. I think trusts provide the greatest protection for pets because we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to name pet caregivers. We're going to name a trustee. We're going to name all of the specific instructions for the pets. We're going to hopefully leave sufficient amounts of money so that the pets can be properly cared for during their lifetime. And when the last of those pets has passed away, we're going to leave hopefully a charitable beneficiary. The reason I like charitable beneficiaries is because people stink. And if we leave a person, there is a better than even likelihood that that person will try to bust the trust to get to the money earlier, sooner rather than later, and they may not want to wait until the pets have died. Very famous case, I don't know if you've heard of it, but Leona Helmsley, many, many years ago, she was known as the Queen of Mean. She was involved with the Hilton hotel chain, but that may not be right. It was a hotel chain. She left a trust for the benefit of her dog Trouble, $12 million for Trouble's care, which you think would be all well and good, except for the remainder beneficiaries got a lawyer, challenged the trust, and convinced a judge that Trouble didn't need $12 million, that $1 million would be sufficient. And the judge agreed. And I think that was a travesty, because if I'm Leona Helmsley and I have $1 billion, I should be able to do whatever I want with my money.
Your business, your money, for Pete's sakes.
Right, including leaving it to my pets, which is why I would never leave a person as the beneficiary of a pet trust. So that's just my personal bent on it. I've seen it way too many times where the people get greedy and they want the money now, and they really don't care about the lifetime care of the pet. Pet trusts can be created during lifetime, but they may not be fully effective until the pet parent has died. If they're not effective until death, or we don't include provisions in a living trust, then we don't have the language that we need to provide for the care of a pet in the event the pet parent becomes incapacitated. So we want to think about all those things. Pet trust can actually be created in a last will and testament. I do not recommend it. And the reason I do not recommend it is that wills require probate, and probate can come along with significant delays. I did allow one of my clients once upon a time, many, many years ago, before I had this experience, to create a pet trust for his cats in his last will. And it actually took 4 months to get a personal representative appointed. Meanwhile, the cats were languishing at his house. And fortunately, he had good neighbors and friends who were willing to care for those pets out of their own pocket until access could be obtained to his funds to reimburse them. But that is not always going to be the case. So I much prefer a pet trust to be created in a living trust, where we can much more quickly and without court order get a person in place as a successor trustee so that they can access funds and care for the pets. I've already mentioned this, but we do need to make sure that we're leaving sufficient money to care for the lifetime of those pets. You know, a de minimis amount, $1,000, $10,000, probably not going to be enough, depending on the type of pets you have, their age, and their health condition. And just because they're older doesn't mean they don't cost a lot to take care of. They might actually cost more than a younger pet because of their health-related concerns.
Yeah, one of the things that I've seen Peggy put in her pet trust that I really like is a requirement of pet insurance, so that the medical care doesn't become a fear to the care person, because they know they'll have premiums to be able to pay, or the trust will pay premiums, so that they'll always have pet trust, pet insurance to cover whatever kind of medical veterinarian bills. And that makes me feel comfortable, because I think care people will be nervous about the amount of money it's going to take to manage this pet, especially if it has a lot of health concerns. So Peggy puts that in the trust, and it's just a nice comfort to see it there.
Yeah, and I think that's great, because it does help us have some certainty about what is it going to cost to provide for the care of a pet. I have, in my own personal life, with 8 dogs and a cat, I don't carry pet insurance on all of those pets. I do have emergency pet insurance through an organization called PAWP, P-A-W-P. It allows me to insure up to 6 pets for emergency care, for, I think it's only $19.99 a month.
Really?
Yeah, it's very, very reasonable. It's for emergency care only, but those are typically going to be, you know,
And those are $2,500 to walk in the door.
I know, right?
PAWP, right?
PAWP,
All right,
right?
I just put that in the chat.
So I have all 8 of my dogs and my cat under that emergency insurance. Unfortunately, they don't cover horses. But just the routine care for pets was astronomical for me with 9 pets. And so I just created my own sinking fund. So I pay premiums to a savings account every month that is building up over time, so that if I have care costs that are unexpected, I have a pot of money to provide for them.
Okay.
A standalone pet trust is really just what it sounds like. It is a trust that has a single purpose, and that purpose is to provide for the care of pets. It's still a revocable living trust, but it just has that single purpose. It does need to be funded properly with cash, securities, bank accounts, retirement plans, life insurance, to make sure that we have enough money for the care of pets. A standalone pet trust could also be funded by other persons. So let's say I had a standalone pet trust, I can direct assets to that pet trust. My spouse could also direct assets to that pet trust. So if we wanted to name the beneficiary of our IRA or our life insurance, we could do that.
So Peggy, in the guardianship realm, just this question popped up in my mind as you're talking. So it's a revocable at that point, right?
It is revocable, yes.
So upon adjudication of award, do you think that changes the revocable status of it? Or does it give it over to the guardian to still be revocable and I could still make changes?
I think with court permission, you might be able to make changes. It's going to depend on what the trust says. If it allows for modification by persons
Other than
legal representatives, yeah,
okay, all right.
other than the
It just popped into my
grantor.
head because, you know, what's likely to happen is some of those pets have passed or something has changed and we become the guardian of a gentleman who originally had 6 dogs. He's now got 3 dogs, or maybe he now has 9 dogs. I just wanted to know if the action, if the incapacity makes it go from revocable to irrevocable, does that happen like by operation of law or no?
Not by operation of law, but it could by the terms of the trust.
Okay.
We're really not getting into the weeds on some of
Sorry.
this today, but that's all right. So there's a whole concept known as a trust protector as well. So a lot of times if we have a grantor who is now disabled and they can't make changes to their trust, if they've empowered a trust protector, they may be able to make necessary changes.
Okay. Okay.
Standalone pet trusts have to be integrated with a broader estate plan. They have to talk to each other because it's a standalone instrument. So we want to make sure that one is not undoing the other. So they really need to be integrated and coordinated.
Okay.
How does a pet trust work? Well, the pet parent creates the pet trust for the benefit of the pet trust beneficiaries. Those are the pets, the ones that are entitled to the benefit of the trust. And they can be your loved pets, which are now living, or they can include after acquired pets. So as I mentioned, my trust says, in the event of my disability, my pets are to be all of my pets that I own at that relevant time. Same thing is true at the time of my death. So the faces can change. I don't have to be specific about each and every animal that I'm providing for.
Okay.
I have named multiple pet caregivers with lots and lots of alternates. I like to see lots of alternates so that we know that if the first, second, third person can't take on the responsibility, that the fourth person might be willing to do that. The property of the pet trust is typically administered by a trustee who's going to be responsible for managing, investing, and distributing the trust property according to the pet trust instructions. So what do the instructions say? Can trustees be individuals? Absolutely. Not always recommended, but they can also be corporate. And that was another reason that I created Animal Care Trust USA. They are a nonprofit organization that's qualified to act as a trustee in the state of Florida. So, and as I mentioned, they are the only US trustee that I know of that's dedicated solely to pet trusts. Most banks or large corporate trustees are not going to want to take on the responsibility of a pet trust. And the primary reason is going to be that we're not going to meet their minimums. So many corporate trustees have a $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, $5 million minimum.
Right.
And my experience to date with corporate trustees is they're happy to manage your money, but they don't want to have anything to do with your pets.
Or your person.
Or your person, right? Yeah, they really don't, right?
They really don't. Yeah.
I've gone a step further in some of my pet trusts, including what I call a pet care panel or an animal care panel. This is just an additional group of people that would provide oversight. They can really be the liaisons between the trustee and the pet caregiver, or they could help make difficult decisions like critical care or euthanasia if that became relevant. I always include provisions for the pet's lifetime care. I've adopted a couple of terms that I call forever home, which means that you want your pets to remain in your own home with a pet caregiver who comes and lives in your home. That's what I want for my pets. That's not what everybody's going to want, but that's what I want. So if I die, I have a nominated pet caregiver who's going to move into my home and take over the responsibility for the lifetime care of my pets. And the bonus to that person is when the last of my pets die, they can have my home because guess what? I don't need it.
And that's kind of how this so connects with if you're imagining a child.
Yep.
So, in the new world now of child custody stuff, it's now becoming common that the parents move in and out of the family home and the kids stay stable instead of the kids popping back and forth to mom and dad's house. It's becoming recognized that you can leave them where they're used to being and happy, and you come bring the care to them. And that's kind of how this reminds me of that. It kind of connects.
Yeah, that is exactly right. And as I mentioned earlier, I don't really think my pets care who's delivering the food and the love as long as it's somebody. But I think that they would be most comfortable remaining in their own environment. So that's what they get. Second choice is what I call forever family. This is where a pet would be rehomed with another loving family. Third choice would be what I refer to as a forever sanctuary, where pets would live in a structured pet community. The cats that I mentioned earlier that were part of a pet trust created in a will, they all went to live at a senior cat sanctuary where they were able to live out their lives. We also want to make sure that we include instructions for the end of life care for our pets. Do we want our pets cremated? Do we want them buried? And then what do we want to do with the disposition of the cremains if we've cremated the pet? Where do we want to have them buried? What are the specific instructions? I had the opportunity a couple years ago to distribute my clients' ashes in the intercoastal waterway in Daytona
Oh,
Beach.
nice,
And all of her pets went with her, I'm happy to
nice,
say.
nice.
And then our trust will say that upon the death of the last of our pets, the remainder beneficiary is going to receive whatever's left in the trust. And I like to recommend, as I said, charitable beneficiaries so that we can avoid family conflicts. I'm getting to the point where I don't even want to work with families who have children.
This is why Peggy doesn't do divorce either.
I know it's crazy.
Absolutely not.
How do we calculate the cost of care? All right, I've said don't be a cheapskate. Make sure you leave enough money to care for your pets. So we have to think about what is the type and age of our pet? What are the food and medicines that they're taking currently? What about toys and treats? What about veterinary care, annual care, chronic care, catastrophic care? Teresa mentioned healthcare insurance for pets as a way to manage that care. That could be included within that. Boarding or grooming care. I don't have pets that need to go to the groomers because I don't have any of those types of dogs. But gosh, my horses, they get a pedicure monthly and I don't. So have to include that in. What's the end of life care going to cost? The cremation or the burial, the final disposition? Are we going to compensate our pet caregiver in some way? Are we just going to pay the expenses of the pets, or are we also going to give some additional compensation because this person is using their time, their energy to take care of our pets? If we've chosen the forever home option, where the pets are going to stay at home, then we also have to make sure that we're covering the cost of the mortgage, taxes, insurance, utilities, maintenance, etc. I was trying to work with this one gal once upon a time. She desperately wanted her dogs to be able to stay at home, but she just did not have the resources to maintain the house. and provide for the pets.
Mhm.
Um,
A
that was
lot.
a
It's a
really
lot.
hard conversation, but it is a lot of money.
Mm.
So how can we create that money? Well, life insurance might be a really good way. So if you are a younger person and you're insurable, get a whole life insurance policy that's going to create enough cash at your death to provide for your pets.
And in the guardianship realm, a lot of times we have an older client that's got a big life insurance policy, and we're like, "What is this for? It's 30 years past making any sense. They have enough money, their funeral arrangements are paid for, they don't have any beneficiaries. What is this for?" Theoretically, if all the beneficiaries that they have named have died, we could get court order to get that life insurance become to fund the pet trust. So don't one of the things about guardianship, I think a lot of people say, well, they don't need that life insurance anymore. They're 99. Be careful, because number one, you need a court order, whatever you're going to do with that. And two is think about it. Maybe you could use it that way.
Absolutely. That's a very good suggestion, Teresa. Or sometimes life insurance policies can be sold.
Through a viatical. Yep.
Well, not viatical just for your care, but just sold because you don't want to pay the premiums anymore.
Sold back to the company.
No, sold to a third party, actually.
Okay.
Um, it's it's sometimes referred to as stranger-owned life insurance. It's
Uh-huh.
not a viatical settlement because the person's not using it necessarily for their own care, but
So it doesn't have the same requirement that a stranger owned doesn't have the same requirement that a viatical does, meaning that you have 6 months to live. Oh, I didn't
correct.
know about that. All right.
Yes, absolutely. So I had firsthand experience with that because my parents had a second to die life insurance policy in the amount of $1 million. And the premiums were about $16,000 a year. And my dad got tired of making those premium payments. And the reason they got it initially was back in the day when estate tax limits were very low, $650,000, now
Mm.
15 million. Um, that was a way that people often raised the money to pay potential estate taxes was with life insurance policies. So they had the second to die policy. My dad decided he didn't want it anymore. It had cash value of about $22,000. He could have just cashed it in and walked away, but no, because I'm his daughter and I was helping him, we sold that life insurance policy and we were able to sell it for $85,000, which was about equivalent to the premiums that he had paid to date. So it was
Wow.
even some deal in the final analysis, and it made him happy. The part
Okay.
that always made me laugh though was after my dad passed away, so he was the first to die and my mom would be the second to die. The companies would check on her annually because they obviously wanted to know if she was dead yet. And my mom would always say, "Oh, I just got the nicest call from these people. They just wanted to check on me." I go, "No, Mom, they want to know if you're still living." So that was crazy. But if we're paying a professional trustee, we also want to make sure that we include any costs that the trustees might charge in our calculator. I do have an online calculator at actforpets.org if you want to check that out. How are we going to fund our pet trust? Well, lots of sources: our personal checking, savings, CDs, money markets, mutual funds, stocks and bonds, real property, personal property, life insurance, annuities, and then of course our retirement plans. The picture that you see on this page was my beloved Papillon named Layden. She lived to be 16 and a half years old and I still miss her every day. So along comes Animal Care Trust USA. This was my vision for the future. My dad always said that if he was going to create a charity, he would call it Animal Care Trust. So I named it after in his honor, actually. But the motto of our organization is keeping loved pets in loving homes. It really does create a turnkey solution. We have a trust that would be similar to a pooled trust. And I know you're familiar with those, and I've called it the Act for Pets Community Pet Trust, but it works just like a pooled trust, except Medicaid is not the remainder beneficiary.
Mm.
Um, but there are different programs for different people. I will tell you, most people want to do custom pet trusts if they're serious about this.
Yeah.
I would say very few people have done our pooled trust, a couple. Some have done another pet trust that we have that's customizable, but it's not a true custom pet trust. But I would say most of my people want to do custom trusts.
Makes sense.
I have a book out there called All My Children Wear Fur Coats, How to Leave a Legacy for Your Pet. It's in its third edition, and it keeps getting longer and longer as I learn more and have more to share with you.
It's a great read for everybody. It's one of those you can digest it very quickly. It's not written in legalese. It's a great read. I give it to lots of people because it's written at a level that everybody can follow. I think it's a great book.
Thank you, Teresa. I also do a weekly podcast called All My Children Wear Fur Coats with Peggy Hoyt. It's on Buzzsprout or wherever you get your favorite podcast. Every week we talk to somebody interesting in the animal world. So I mentioned I talked to the reptile guy. I had a charity on recently that rehomes birds, parrots in particular, that are very long lived, and lots and lots of interesting people out there.
Yes. All right. So you ready for me to start firing the questions?
I think I am. So I think that's the end of it. Yeah.
That's all right. Okay. So Diana Shields says, if you have a pet trust, how does that fit into ICP Medicaid for a ward with no family? Great question.
That is a potential issue. So you would have to set your pet trust up as a Medicaid asset protection trust with the pets as beneficiaries, and you'd have to do it within the 5-year look back.
You can do it as long as it's 5 years old or older.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Cool question. Probably not.
And I guess potentially you could use a pooled trust.
That would be the question would really be, could you use a pooled trust and then, take care of the pet while the ward is in the nursing home and the ward dies? But Medicaid is not going to allow that, are they?
No, they're not going to allow the funding of a pet trust at the end of the ward's lifetime, but it might go a long way to providing for care during the pet's
While
lifetime.
they're alive. Okay.
Yeah.
Monica, when you get a second in chat, you asked a question. You said, why is that? And I wasn't following what you were asking about.
Oh,
All right.
I'm sorry, Teresa. We were talking about people euthanizing their pets when they die. Never heard of that. And I was wondering why.
Oh, well, two reasons. To be fair, they are worried about them. Here's how you can understand this. It might settle in your brain properly. If you ask every parent that you'll ever meet, who do they want to pass away first, them or their children? They'll always say them, except if they're the parent of a developmentally disabled child. They know they can't take care of themselves, just like Peggy as a dog mom knows her dogs can't take care of themselves. It's not a good solution. It's just a solution. So, I mean, I don't like it. It was terrible when I was experiencing that, but I don't have anger towards her. I do understand why she chose that. But anyway, okay. So Jacqueline says, how does a pet trust involve person and people to provide care for the pets? And how do we ensure the funds and home are indeed used for the pets? Well, I think Peggy addressed that, but Peggy, you want to hit that for just another second more?
Well, if we're using a trust and the instructions of the trust authorize the trustee to provide for the care of the individual as well as their pets, the way you ensure that is that trustee actually has a fiduciary responsibility, but that pet parent could go even further and build in that animal care panel that I was talking about that would provide additional oversight care for the pets. I'm not sure that that's responsive to the question, but.
No, it's exactly what you're looking for.
Okay.
Who's going to be the person? Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Diana asks, are there any laws regarding the disposition of cremains of a pet in a ward's living environment when the ward dies? Diana, do you mean dumping the ashes out in their backyard? Just tell me.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Peggy, got any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Here's my legal opinion. Get forgiveness, not permission.
Okay, I got to tell a cremation story because it's time. I love to tell stories. So we had a client. Her first name was Lou, one of my favorite clients ever, badass gal. She had a ceramic poodle that we found in her living room and realized that it was the urn for the cremains. Didn't know it right away, but figured it out, thank goodness. That thing meant more to her than anything else. this was years ago. I talked to the funeral home. I said, I really want to put her ashes in her casket. Oh, no, you can't. That's illegal. Okay. All right. So I thought about it for a long time and I decided. She had a beautiful inlaid wooden box, like a old fashioned jewelry box kind of looking thing with beautiful inlaid ivory, very pretty, probably 100 years old. And her family wanted none of her stuff. So I took the ashes from the ceramic dog, put them inside the box, tightly glued that box shut so nobody could open it, because you're allowed to put things in the casket, photos and memorabilia and things. And I said, this is her favorite box. I want to put this in with her. So I got it done. I got it done. Lucy has her baby with her in her casket. Okay, here's a question. Can a pet caregiver sue the estate for resources to properly care for the pet in the instance of a large and unanticipated vet bill? Good question.
I don't know. Can you sue anybody for anything? Yes. So potentially you could sue. I'd rather see a pet trust that authorizes those expenditures so people don't have to sue, because honestly, lawsuits are just a huge waste of resources. So, I mean, could you sue? You could try. It
But if you
depends.
think about it, Marilyn, so you say sue the estate. So theoretically, there's been an estate plan here. There's been some kind of plan. If there wasn't a plan, meaning there was no pet trust, then that's a problem, because the estate could say, well, she didn't do that, so it wasn't her. She wasn't concerned about taking care of her pets.
Right.
So it would be interesting how the actual, estate planning came to be, like what trusts were set up and what. So it's interesting.
Well, because if it's just strictly an estate that's making distributions to people,
based on a will.
yeah, and the pets are not named. They cannot be individual beneficiaries. I cannot leave $100,000 to my dog.
Okay.
I can only leave it to a trust for the benefit of my dog. So if my will says leave everything to people and now you want to sue for the benefit of the pets, I think you're probably out of luck.
I think so too. Okay.
Now, doesn't mean there won't be a suit. I just think that I don't think it's a winning argument at this stage in the law.
So Peggy put in Asher Group in the chat. I have heard them present on viaticals, but I don't think I ever heard them present on stranger owned. So that's great. Now I know.
Yeah, they're really called life settlements, Teresa.
Okay. Well, then that I know, but I know those under big D4A lawsuits. I didn't think of those like that. All right. Well, I'm going to get them to come and talk to us about that, because I try to always have great speakers, and the Asher Group are great presenters, but we never talked about that part.
Yes, and they are great presenters, and they're local. So.
Okay, so it is 4:18 and we're over time, but that's okay. Nobody's panicking. You guys can, if you've got more questions, you can raise your hand over on the little screen if I can see it. You can put it in chat, or maybe just start talking and hopefully I can hear you.
Or you can email me individually if you have a question.
Yeah, so the question you don't want to ask here, you can definitely ask Peggy elsewhere. So we'll give it a minute or two. Kate, do you want to tell everybody how they get their CEs? Because that's always a question. Wait a minute, it's not Kate, it's Julie. Julie, you want to tell everybody how the CE part works?
Sure, I will. So Kate will be sending out CEs to everybody that registered. She usually sends a certificate with it. As a big important reminder, keep your certificates, keep your own record of your CEs. But Kate sends them out usually within a couple days, but please give her up to a week. There's usually a lot of people on our webinars, and she'll send you everything that you need. So it'll come by email. Keep your eyes out for it.
Yeah, which is super important, why you guys need to keep your email current with Aged, because what happens is Aged probably drowns you with emails, and sometimes you might get tired. You might unsubscribe. Well, then you're not getting the stuff. So we do send out a lot of emails, and I hope it's not too much, but we try to just constantly send you stuff that I believe, Aged believes you really need, and it's really helpful. So multiple thank yous from lots of folks. And I want to thank you, Peggy, because Peggy is the gal that if there's anything to do with pets, an attorney calls me and starts having a conversation, I'm like, stop. We're going to have this conversation with Peggy, because we're not going to have it with just you and me. So she walks the walk. Okay. So when an attorney represents someone who has no pets, an attorney is not a pet person, I don't really think they can get the the whole plan of us crazy pet people. So,
Oh, they definitely don't. I know that from experience. I've seen a lot of really poorly drafted plans for pets that were drafted by lawyers that really are not pet people.
they're not connected at all. Yeah.
Yeah, and I once had a client ask me, I want to plan for my horses. Do you think I should use a an attorney who has horses? And I'm like, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to know what the needs of a horse are more than anybody else.
Great question, Jackie. Is it legal to use Peggy as attorney for our guardianships and our personal trusts?
Well, we don't do guardianship representation, so
But if the other way, Jackie, I can answer that question. Peggy did the estate planning for our family. That's personal, just us, our estate planning. And if I needed Peggy to represent us in a fiduciary situation, not a guardianship, and they don't do, Peggy does not like doing the lawsuit cases, but there could be, for example, she could represent me as the PR to an estate, Peggy, right? You'd have
absolutely I could. Yes,
Okay.
and I can do your own personal planning.
Right. So you have
Yes.
to, a lot of attorneys don't do guardianship, and so you got to balance that part. So great question.
I know, and I feel sorry for you guys now because there are so few people I know that really want to work in that guardianship area. So thank you very much for your service.
Well, that's part of what Peggy the peer we're working so hard on. I'm now doing a whole lot with the bar because I'm trying to get, what's happening is we got great guardians being represented by crappy attorneys, and that is
Right.
really bad, especially new guardians being represented by crappy attorneys. It's one thing when it's an experienced guardian because they know what crappy looks like, but a brand new guardian doesn't know what crappy looks like, and they end up being represented by a bad attorney who does bad stuff, and then they get in trouble, and then they leave guardianship because they think it's all bad. So we're working very hard to try to kind of resolve that. Let's see, anything else? So everybody probably on here knows about the GSI training. It is at Agent's office in Longwood. We do it every other month. We just did it. The next date is March 12th. If you haven't done it yet, plan to do it. It's a whole day. You will be exhausted. It's very inexpensive. It's like $50 if you're a member of the peer group. It is walking into 2 scenarios where you got appointed as the guardian and you have to do everything. Peggy, we now have CEs for this for paralegals, judges, attorneys, everybody. Kate worked so hard. She has CEs for almost every profession. Trust officers, financial planners, all those people can get CEs for going to this. So anyone you want to send this GSI information to, please do. Same for everybody on this.
I picked up the flyer, Teresa, at the Elder Law Conference last weekend.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I think we're good. Let me check. Hold on. One more new email. Okay. Peggy says agent has a copy of my presentation that they can share with you. Okay, that's cool.
Right, so we'll make sure Kate gets those out with the CE information when she sends the credits and the certificates and stuff. Then she'll send a copy of the slides as well.
Okay. All right. So everybody good? Any last questions? I'm looking for any.
Question. This is Diana.
Diana, go ahead.
Peggy, would you be interested in possibly speaking at the FSGA conference in Orlando in July?
Yes, if I'm in Orlando at that time, so I can try to work my schedule around that.
I can send your information. Would it be okay if I sent your information to Gina at FSGA? She's the executive director. She kind of arranges this.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And Teresa, I'm happy to have you co-present with me if you want to.
Sure. We did. Peggy and I have done it before. The one that we did that was really fun is we played the tape in the beginning of it. Said who let the dogs out. It was really fun. Back in the day. Okay. All right. So
All right.
Are we good? Everybody good? No more questions? I don't see any more questions here. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Peggy, very much for giving your time. And thank you, everybody, for coming, getting your CEs and getting more educated for pets for yourself and for your wards.
Yep. And you are very, very welcome. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.